Welcome to Season 4 of the Knack 4 Business Podcast.
Today's show is brought to you by our K4B Profit Snapshot. Here's one question worth sitting with. If you stepped away from your business for 30 days, would it grow or contract? That answer tells you a lot about where you really stand. Try the free 5-minute snapshot. It measures process, profit, and personal freedom. Link is in the show notes.
A question to the listener. Why does your business keep moving forward, but you constantly feel drained and out of sync with your team? Our guest will break down why traditional productivity is burning out founders and teams and how shifting into flow changes everything. He'll explain how to regain personal flow without working at longer hours, how to create interpersonal flow so teams work with you, not against you. How leaders can build a flow culture that boosts performance without pressure. This isn't about hustling harder. It's about aligning energy, focus, and people so work feels lighter and results improve. Our guest today is Toms Astahovskis from Dream Accelerator Toms. He's known as the Dream Accelerator Toms, and he's a transformative coach who empowers leaders to unlock their superpowers and achieve peak performance. A digital nomad born in Latvia, Toms brings a rich and diverse background to his work, holding a master's degree in electronics and experience as a freelance web developer, yoga teacher, and hostel manager. From his expertise in life coaching, hypnotherapy, and tarot readings, Toms has developed his own unique system called tarot coaching, which combines these methods to deliver rapid, transformative results. His holistic approach incorporates tools like gene keys and human design to help clients reach their goals. Today's passion lies in sustainable productivity coaching, guiding others to harness the power of flow state for lasting success. He also speaks very good Spanish, but only in the present tense because he didn't get into the grammar of it. I know that feeling. And he's also a returning Knack for Business podcast guest. Toms, welcome back. And do you have a favorite quote or saying, sir?
My favorite thing is that when I started doing the tarot readings, I actually didn't do it for telling future. I did it for getting idea how subconscious impacts us and not to buy the stuff I don't want to buy. So all I wanted is learn symbolism so I don't buy stuff that I don't want to, because all the advertisements use symbolism. So that's my favorite thing.
You know, having seen that you've studied, you've gone from the electronics area and you studied electronics to coaching. That's quite the, not about face, but that's a whole different level. You know, it's electronics is more like, pieces coming together, understanding electricity, components, architecture and structure. Coaching is the, dealing with people. And, sometimes we're not always cut the same way from the same cloth. We don't all become robotic. So what broke? The system or the soul?
So how I changed from electronics to life coaching, actually, astrology, that's why I actually like these tools. Astrology explains it quite simply. My mind is in Virgo and it likes details and understanding how things work. And from my perspective, understanding how mobile phone works is exactly the same how understanding how human mind works. So the difference between electronics and coaching is not the difference, because in both cases, I still try to understand how the system works. Just the subject of the system slightly changes. And how I got from electronics to coaching was simply after going in an internship in Japan, which is very far away from Latvia, which is where I'm from. I realized that I actually want to be outside of Latvia. I want to travel. I want to live, see the world. And as I started gradually going on a journey, first I was web developer. Then I went to the hostel because I wanted to, I'm a web developer freelance, but I need to get my clients. Where do I get clients? With zero social skills. So that's like, let me put in a social environment like hostel. So I put myself in a hostel. And in a hostel, I started doing yoga. And as I was doing yoga, I eventually discovered also coaching. And it's like that was my journey. And answer your question, nothing really broke. It just gradually went that way naturally.
Very nice. Productivity and flow. When I think of flow, the word flow, if you're watching a river or a stream, right, it flows. Productivity, think of a factory, boxes coming off a conveyor belt. If I oversimplify it, how do you get that piece of productivity so that it is flow? Like, walk me around that picture, because one is like a very mechanical thing, and the other one it has a graceful art to it, but yet it has the same outcome.
Yeah. So many people have different definitions of what flow is. What does it mean? And same thing for productivity. And purely from perspective of energy, let's say energy is a full flow of river. If you put a bunch of rocks in a river, then that water needs to kind of bend around. There's resistance, waves, and all kinds of disturbances happen. And it's probably not the best way how to construct a river with lots of objects in it and lots of turns and twists. So that's what flow is, literally having streamlined continuous flow of energy, in this case through human body, through mind, through emotions, through actions. And if there's any kind of disturbances, resistance, or hesitation, let's say the same factory example. If factory stops working, one person stops working, or one machine suddenly stops working, that's like mind starting doubting itself for a while, and then action is no longer fluid. And factory work the best when it flows through the whole operations. The whole chain works in harmonious way. And the same thing for human or whatever the task there is. So that's what I see in my flow, and productivity is the same thing. It's just most efficient way of basically using energy that we have as humans.
You know, as you talked about it in the description of your story, being nomadic, is that you being the river as opposed to being the riverbed, and you're just kind of going around the flow and just finding where the best fit is?
Yeah, you could say it like that. It's like when I realized that I can be anywhere in the world and I can choose my destinations and place where I work from. And yeah, it's like, doesn't matter whether I make a port and allow sailors to come to me, or I am the sailor and flow and explore different ports. In both cases, there's a flow of experiences. And I chose, okay, I actually want to see more people, and I'm more excited about the idea of sailing around instead of building a port and servicing sailors. That's just me.
That makes sense. So you've been many things. You've had many jobs. You've done yoga, hypnotherapy, a developer. How did you blend all these elements into one package, into one service in your nomadic life? And by the way, I think it's also cool because as you change location, right, you also pick up new things, right, and new understandings.
Yeah. So one thing I've noticed with travels and changing location is you meet different people with different traits. And the more you meet different people, more you realize there are some things that are kind of same. There are certain patterns and certain traits that are universal amongst many people. Then different tools like yoga, hypnotherapy, then there's astrology, all these things. They're just different tools to show you the same system, human body, human experience from different perspectives. When it comes to converging into a one method, for me, it's always contextual. There needs to be some kind of outcome, some kind of target. And within that target, I can use tools. Knife is just a knife, like doesn't have any meaning whatsoever. But once I put it in a context, it's in bread, making cakes, and suddenly it has a use. And that's how I see these different tools. They're just tools. Developer maybe giving me idea like more like mechanical thinking, frameworks, more of a frame of mind, how to see people, how to see patterns, that there is cause and effect, and I can always find a cause, and maybe a bit of patience towards the quirks of technology, and human also have quirks. Kind of everything kind of fits in nicely as soon as there's an outcome or target, and then it's like, okay, this is where I want to go, and how do I get there? And then sometimes I use some tools, and sometimes I don't use other tools. So it's same with the baking cake. Sometimes I don't need a knife to bake a cake. Like I may need it to eating it, but not for baking.
So when you're reaching out to help somebody with flow, and we kind of covered what flow is, how do they know they have a problem with flow? Is it just, they're just feeling kind of cruddy? Things aren't going as expected? Is the expectations the issue as opposed to what the outcome is? What's the flag for them to go, I should reach out to Tom's?
So I've been struggling actually myself to define flow because there's so many definitions out there, and there's no like one universal definition that says this is what flow is and this is what it's not. Like, it's not that straightforward. However, what is curiously enough, because I speak with many people and sometimes I ask them, do you know what flow is? And often, most of the times, they would say, no, I have no clue what it is. Like, what is it like? Because depending on the context, they may think different things like flow mechanics. So maybe they think about following intuition, like many ideas what it could be. But once I actually descriptively describe them, like moments where you feel fully engaged, reality disappears, like watching a movie, like you're in a movie and like you forget everything else in your life. Do you have that experience? Yes, I have that experience. And then I ask, well, do you have sometimes when you have a deep conversation with a friend and then time flies and you just are so into conversation that nothing else exists? Do you have those experiences? They will say yes. Well, and then I say, that's flow. And that's the beauty of it. Everyone has experience of flow. And once you say these few things, they realize, yeah, I know what it is. And when people come to me is when they realize that, wait, I can be in flow in anything I do, even if it's something I don't prefer to do, like accounting for many people or taxes. Like anyone can get into a flow in any activity if they want to. If they need to do like if they need to do work, might as well do it in the most productive way. So there's more time doing other stuff that you actually want to do. So regardless whether you want to be more productive in things you actually enjoy doing, or you want to be more productive in things you don't necessarily enjoy as well, why not get over it in a fastest way? And sometimes it's not about flow, it per se, it's more like realizing you can automate, delegate, eliminate, or optimize the tasks you need to do. Because some tasks you actually don't need to do at all. And that's also some things that get discovered with coaching, just introspection. So that would be my short answer about what flow is. Everyone knows what it is. It's bringing it to a productive and useful case and realizing it could be a skill as well.
So we've talked about, the person, and I get the flow with the individual. But if you're working with a team or in a business, then everybody else has, we're the same yet we're not, right? And so if you're working for a company, you kind of know what the company does. You kind of know what the outcomes are supposed to look like. If you're working in a farm, it's produce or livestock. If you're in a factory, it's the widget comes off the line. It moves. You're part of that process. How do you find the flow? Do you look at it as a team process? Is it a kind of a design? This is how things should come together and flow. Because in Japan, they have different views on how design should work. If something, how do you always improve things? And that's a design. That's not necessarily the people. And the people now have to understand this is kind of the best way to do something, versus the inside the person going, okay, I got to do this change. So if you're a solopreneur, the Kaizen and you are all in one. But if it's you and 20 other people, getting that flow, how do you address those two elements, those two areas?
Well, how I like to address it is make it simple and realizing that if it's a team consists of individuals. So first and foremost, every single individual in the team must be able to get in the flow. So it's addressing, can I do it on my own when I'm alone? So that's the first base level. And I call it personal flows. When I'm on my own, I know what to do. Can I be in flow? There's no distractions and I control every single aspect of myself, like my environment, my thoughts. I'm in full control. And first dealing with that part. And then once I'm good at being in flow on my own, it's okay. Let me add some distractions. Let me add some people around. And then it's interpersonal flow. It's like, can I still be in flow when there's a chance that someone may talk to me? There's other people, other emotions. And then we master that part. And finally, once I'm okay working on my own thing, on my own with other people around me, then it goes into the culture and team dynamics. And it's like, okay, is the leadership, the company, is the structure, is the culture created in a way that it actually supports flow? And one of the things I notice many companies are implementing is that they have so many meetings that people show up for, and they have literally no input there. Like they have nothing to do with the meeting, and it's just a flow breaker for them. And then they have to spend an hour in a meeting where they have nothing to do, and then they need to spend 15 more minutes to actually remember what they need to do. And then once they got into doing the thing that they need to do, they have an email, and now they have to answer the email because the company policy says you have to respond within a half an hour or so. So I would call this type of system non-conductive to flow. That's the third level, realizing is what needs to happen to individuals so that they feel comfortable and conducive to being in a flow. So everything's contributing to creating an amplifying flow instead of breaking.
So here's kind of a question, and I'm kind of doing a flip on this on the flow, and I get why the flow is handy, because if you're in the flow, everything, you're not feeling resistance and you're not feeling anxiety or distress. But sometimes, if you're doing, let's say, weightlifting, let's say no pain, no gain, right? And so is there an aspect of flow where you have to have a moment where it's not working out well? Is it just not so much that you've done something wrong? For example, if I were to drive my car on a sunny summer day, it's not the same thing as when there's an ice storm, right? Because now I got a whole different set of driving skills that are not every day, as opposed to a nice sunny summer day. In the business side of the fence, is it Is it healthy to have moments where that's not working, sit back, reflect, and then work it out? Or is it always, if you have no contrast, things won't show up?
How I like to approach this idea, does it have to be a challenge? I don't think that's a good question to ask in the sense that challenges come and happen. Like we don't need them, but they happen regardless. So do we really need them? I would say no, we don't really need to create more challenges for ourselves necessarily. However, the Flow founder, Mikhaili Csikszentmihalyi, that guy, with a really crazy surname. So he wrote the book about flow state. And in that book, he basically mentions that flow is where challenge meets skill. So most of the times, challenge is defined by environment, and there's not that much we can do with the challenge. As you said, like weather, I cannot control the weather, but I can control when I take my car out on that weather. So I also can control other things. So basically, challenge is there already. So it's not about what's healthy, what's not. The question is, what do I do with this challenge? Do I chunk it down? And obviously, when challenge arises, the most productive place is in a channel where it's not too stressful, but not too boring. So it's in the sweet spot in between. So to answer your question, it's like you always seek the flow. That's the outcome. So as you seek the flow, you notice what are the external challenges, what are internal challenges, and match that to be in that sweet spot. And obviously, if you're driving in an ice storm, then you might not be fully relaxed like a chill flow, but you still are focused and aware to match your skills, relax and reflexes. So you might be more like on edge, but still you're in a flow. And that's one of the things that it's really important for people to understand that flow is not like this one feeling and it's always the same. It's that fluidity of mind and ability to move in a harmony. That's the indication of flow. And it can happen when you're stressed. And you also mentioned about, do I have to have the stress feeling? Stress feeling is there regardless. Like even if in your flow, you can have the feeling. The question is how centered and calm you remain as you feel those feelings, because they were going to happen. If you're going through a day, suddenly someone shouts at you. Well, of course you feel the stress initially, but what's your reaction? If you're flow, then you realize it doesn't give me any danger. Someone's called me a name. What do I do now? So, and then you go with it. So yeah, so it's basically matching challenge versus skill and then acting accordingly and aiming for that flow, adapting to environment instead of trying to convince ourselves, I need to be in stress or no stress. Like it doesn't work. It's just going to happen.
So I think we kind of touched on it. What are some of the myths that people have about productivity?
Myths about productivity. I think one of the main ones is that it takes longer and it's less productive to get myself into a flow or train myself to be in flow than to push through on this one thing. It's basically making those small, tiny exceptions that I know how to get this task done. I know how to get it done in a way and not necessarily looking for a flow-based way. It's I know I can get it done. I can force myself, push myself. I can push myself in a burnout. Or this kind of mindset is like faster. Actually, it's the best way to push myself instead of actually taking a break, maybe going for a walk, figuring out what needs to be done, why it needs to be done, and doing it in a flow-based ways. Most of the times, taking a short pause before acting is the most efficient way, even if it takes time out of the doing part. So I think that's the biggest myth, like that people may not believe mentally, but in action, they actually act like they will believe that, no, I need to push through. Like this is just one thing, like, and I'm going to push through. That's the myth, that it's actually effective to do that. And it's actually not.
So are there small habits that you can do to always improve the flow? Like, it's sort of like, like if you're doing, let's say, a weight training or exercise, or you're going to do competition sports, it's training. You don't become the expert in 1 hour, or learning a new language. It takes practice to get perfection. Is there something you can do every day to get into that headspace where personal flow improves?
So it's a good question. Because one of the things you need to be in flow is have a clear outcome. So you need to know what you want to achieve, because then you need to measure your progress. So that's part of the sequence of getting in the flow. And one of the very simplest hacks or habits you can have to make sure that you always know what you want is ask yourself, what do I want? Because most of the time is if I go throughout my day and start focusing too much on problems, I can waste, so especially in programming and debugging, I can waste so much time on researching problem, understanding the cause and all these things. But eventually I need to start implementing the fix, the patch basically. And I can go on many tangents, especially in programming. There's so many tangents. I can solve this problem in 5 different ways. I need to choose one path. And I can start implementing one path, and halfway through, I realize this is going to be longer than I expected. Maybe I need to retrace myself. So if I constantly ask myself, what do I want? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this small research here? Why am I doing these things? The more I ask myself, what do I want? The more I remember the things in a big picture and small picture. And just asking this one question, what do I want? What do I want? Puts person in a solution-oriented mindset and remove all kinds of other junk that happens when I focus on problems or go into too many details or too broad mindset. So just having that vision is really, really helpful.
So, how long does it take a person to typically, because again, the variable is the person, how long does it take them to find that flow? If they're totally not distraught, but they're totally, if things aren't going well, they're stressed. How long does it normally take for them to go from that state into the flow state where, just chill, deal with things will be challenging. Yes, you will feel there's like the resistance, like if you're doing training, but at the same time, that's good. And now you're less stressed or distraught. How long does that cycle take to drift a person over from one lane to the next?
It's a very interesting, almost philosophical question, because I really truly believe that the saying, as you believe, so it shall be done unto you. So if I believe it takes me 15 minutes, there's so many research, like, and it's more like a mythical level of saying that to switch tasks, your brain needs 15 minutes to get adapted. And the question is it really true? Is it really true that it takes 15 minutes to switch? Sometimes it seems that way and sometimes it's not. What I find is that brain is extremely capable and it can shift in a split second. Like literally it takes split second to shift from being in a disempowered state, feeling stuck, to feeling in a flow and finding your way around it. However, it may take time to get the whole system on board. And that's deeply individual based on so many variables that it's really unreasonable to say it takes 15 minutes, 20 minutes. One rule of thumb that I believe it may be true or universally is saying that in emotions last 90 seconds. Emotional reaction in the body from creation to depletion lasts 90 seconds. So if there's any emotion lasting longer than 90 seconds, there's only one way how it can happen is that if it being recreated. So something's feeling emotions being recreated. That's how moods happen, is continuously creating that emotion. And that applies also to the flow. So I may get into a flow in terms of my mind instantly, but I still have this baggage of emotions coming from all directions. And God knows what's creating those emotions consciously and subconsciously. And it may take time to like fully remove them off my field and fully feel as I'm in a flow. But the actual decision to get in the flow happens instantly. And then it's okay, how persistent am I and how disciplined I am to actually be able to bring myself in a full being and really lose myself in activity, which is indication of flow. If you believe it's going to be 15 minutes, it's going to be 15 minutes. But my experience is that sometimes it doesn't take at all. If I'm like really drawn to activity, it takes split second, even like switching between tasks, split second. And sometimes I do take 15 minutes. It's more how excited and how much do you believe in an activity you want? And the things you're excited about takes no time. Things you don't want to have to do usually takes a bit longer because there's a bit of resistance and like convincing yourself, do I really need it to access today? Maybe not. So that's how it works.
So, in a team environment, how do you know that you've had success with flow? That's part one. Part two, then, how do you know that let's say it's sort of like when I put my hand underneath the tap of water. Is it hot or cold? Well, it's cold now, but I've turned on the hot water portion, that valve. It just hasn't achieved its peak state, so I have to put my hand back in within a few seconds. How do you know that you're there, and how do you kind of sense that you still are there? Do you test a month from now with a team, or 2 months, or is it apparent?
So one of the key indicators of true flow is appreciation of the process. So people are genuinely happy. So if the people are not genuinely happy doing the thing, they're not in flow. Like they cannot be in flow in that specific moment. And that's one of the indicators. So for example, if the person is complaining, they cannot be happy at that moment. So obviously they're not in flow while they're complaining. So these small things like not smiling, having complaints, having kind of back talking, like those are indicators that at that specific moment, they're not in a flow. They might be in a flow when they work, like their sales, for example. You are in a flow when you do the sales, but what do you do in between? So you kind of those are small indicators. And the more you spend time in flow, the more you want to flow also in between. And those are great indicators. The more happy you are, the more open and enjoying life you are, the more likely you are in the flow. Obviously, you can be happy and not necessarily be in flow, or you are in flow, but not in the right direction, which is also a very important thing. Like I can be in flow, but my flow goes in not the same direction as company. And then there's this resistance. And yes, I'm in a flow individually, but it's not in harmony and in same place where a company goes. And then of course, you notice there's this, again, lack of fulfillment, resistance, maybe resentment, and that shows up. So anything negative showing up is the best indicator, and the best way how to get them is just simply talk with people and ask them, how do you feel, what's happening? And those would be the simple things anyone can do.
It's interesting the flow of the people. Where I'm thinking of in some businesses, you'll have, let's say, you can have the accountant, you can have the marketing person who does artwork, you can have the guy on the factory floor doing production. Each has their own flow, their own way of flowing, which might be a best way to describe it. Together, there's a reason why that you and I would not love doing tax returns. It ain't our jam, so to speak. Not that we couldn't do it, but just and that's not me. And other people, that's their sweet spot. And nothing wrong with it. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. How do you manage the differentials between people that, some are extremely detail oriented, some are more fluid? It requires different processes, different thought processes. I don't want to take anything away from any one group, because sometimes they look at each other going, yeah, you just do that. You're either too rigid or you're too flexible. How do you manage? Because you're getting the team together, you need these different resources and these different flavors. How do you make sure that their flow, each of them has that flow that comes in, but at the same time, their persona, their happiness quotient of what they do is still intact?
Well, it comes back to the same thing I mentioned before, the vision. But basically, if I, as an individual and company, know my place and contribution to the company, and I know that I'm going in, let's say I'm building amazing hotel. Like I'm building a hotel building, and I know that I'm a manager of a place. I need to hire people, and then there's a janitors, and there's cleaning ladies, and there's a kitchen, and there's so many things happening at the hotel. So how do I make sure that everyone's doing well? And I believe there was a book, I forgot the name of it, which was going in a similar direction. And literally is about selling the vision, realizing that my place is really important as a key aspect. And if I know how other people fit into the picture, then it's easy for me to interact with them in a harmonious way. Because I know for me to do my job best, I need to make sure that other people also do their job best. And I know how it fits into like a puzzle, basically. You can see the whole picture and puzzle only when all pieces are in. And only when all pieces are fitting together well. And the same thing happens with people. Once I know what's the picture we're building, the vision, where we're going, and once I know how other people help me to get there, because I want to get there as well. Like I want to be part of this amazing journey in a hotel. So it's really selling on that vision and realizing this is your place, this is your contribution, this is the other people's contribution, and you need everyone to get there in the most harmonious and flow-based way. It's usually that is helping people remember, realize, and contribute towards that bigger vision. Everyone wants to be of something bigger. Like every religion will know you that. Like everyone wants to be a part of something bigger, and that's kind of one of the things that human beings have, and just allowing people to have that.
So, what's the process for an individual versus a team to get that flow? Like, what do you do? You sit down with them, give them a hug. What? Like I say that kind of humorously offhand, but what is the process? How do you initiate this, and then how do you maintain this so that if they get in 15 minutes, it's going to be a short conversation. But if it's like if it's going to take longer because there's ingrained habits that are jamming the person up or the company up, how do you engage them?
So yeah, it depends on which level and what's the context. But generally speaking, it's just we have a checklist of flow indicators and we go step by step by step and we check them. Like, is there a vision? Is it clear? Like just making sure that everyone has the same understanding of what is expected of them, that they know exactly what's the outcome, that they having reliable feedback, that feedback is coming frequently enough for them to see that if they're doing correctly or wrong, and basically going through all the flow indicators and checking if they're present or not on an individual level and team level. And just switching and through conversation, like it's simple conversation and seeing how aligned there is in a specific nuanced task or as a whole. yeah, depends on, I usually work on a like outcome base. So basically, once I have an outcome to achieve, then it's evident, okay, is this thing contributing towards outcome or not? That is easy to say. Is it moving us fast or slow? There are maybe 5 things. Which of them move faster? So tell me the goal, tell me the vision, and then everything is measurable against that vision. So basically, that's how it works.
In the beginning, we talked about gene keys, human design, and tarot coaching. So, how do you bring this together? How do you explain these are the three elements that your tools that you're utilizing to help the people? It's sort of like, here's the medicine. Well, what does the medicine do, right? Like, when you go to see a doctor, well, that'll just make you less hungry. That'll make you more awake. Whatever the case might be. How do these things help the person? Well, even not so much help them. How do you explain it to them so that they understand what's happening, so they get in the flow of the results?
So actually, I don't really need to explain the tools because the tools are just tools, and people don't care about tools at all. All they care about is what do I want and how do I get it. And that's the way the context I use any of these tools. It's like, okay, we're here right now having conversation, recording a podcast, and we have a certain outcome. And the question is, why are we not having that certain outcome? And then something usually comes up. And for me, the choice of the tools is fairly intuitive. Like, yeah, I may use tarot cards or I may not. I may use astrology or I may not. So these are just tools. Like, I use them on need to know basis. And if the tool works, amazing. But the most important thing is that they're just tools, and they are tools to reveal awareness. They're tools that give you awareness of the problem and solution. So on their own, they're nothing. They have no value whatsoever until they're being used in specific context for specific outcome. Then they have a value and a meaning. And their value is using certain systems and structures that guide the client through a journey, but they get awareness in a specific way. For example, in astrology, you have 12 zodiacs and 12 houses and many, many planets, and you have a system to guide people to get answers in a very specific way. And there's so many patterns that are really helpful. But at the end of the day, value comes from taking action on that awareness. So that's the place of the tool. Tool is just allowing to have that deeper, faster connection with subconscious, the things that I couldn't even think of asking, especially tarot sessions. It's like once you see those deep symbolism, they just speak so loudly that things come out that like in almost like a therapy session or psychoanalysis, things just show up so fast, so vividly that I couldn't be able to ask a person from private life to go that depth to address it, because business problem could be caused by some kind of personal issues, and personal issues usually affect the business performance as well. And if I purely look at the business and don't touch their personal life, I may not get to the solution fast. But if I'm using these tools, usually these things come up really fast. So that's how I use them to accelerate the process. So people share the things they need to share, so we can address the causes that need to be addressed.
One thing we haven't touched on in our conversation yet is like I get the flow piece, but also it's because it's a very holistic view. All right, be in flow, but diet, sleep, exercise, are these other elements that come into play too? So if the person is not sleeping well, is always hangry, not hungry, but hangry, are these other elements that feed into being able to get in that flow?
Yeah, definitely. Like I just said, everything is connected. Like you cannot take out one piece of equation and expect it to work like in a puzzle piece. It's more about understanding as we go through the process is the leverage point or the impact, like how much of all the variables I have, because there's infinite variables: sleep, diet, relationships, communication, traffic, air quality, even how often that you take out the trash. Maybe there's smells around. Like there's so many things that affect human body and perception that it's impossible to define all of them and know like complete system to say, okay, these are the only things that you need to pay attention to. I would say it's almost impossible to create that kind of system unless you create some kind of structure that everything maps out of 5 things, and then it's doable. But at the end of the day, everything impacts everything. Question is, what are the few things that really impact at this moment? And sometimes, yeah, sleep is important. If you're not sleeping enough, fix that before we go into the mindset things, or fix sleep before we go and try to figure out what's wrong with the relationship, because maybe there's nothing wrong with the relationship. You just haven't slept enough, and you're just, as you said. So these are the kind of things like when you look at the thing, and you're truly honest with yourself, you already know within, like, it's just that self-honesty is the key. As anyone, like, okay, out of all the things, which are the most contributing towards the situation here? And then honestly.
So, a couple of things because we're kind of coming closer to the end here. If someone's listening feels productive but exhausted, what's the first step they should take today to start, pointing themselves in the right direction?
So first is realizing that exhaustion doesn't need to be there and something caused it. So exhaustion is, in a sense, unnatural because in flow, everything charges you up. You feel more energy after the flow. And if you feel tired, the flow leads you towards the rest and recovery. So that's natural part of the flow as well. Like I naturally feel like I need to take a nap. That's part of the flow. It's realizing that exhaustion doesn't need to be there and it can be fixed. And then being honest, like where you're draining yourself, because there's always a draining cause, and where you're not allowing yourself to rest and recover. So if these two things are addressed, then person has swift recovery. And if they're not addressed properly, then they continue draining themselves or does not have as fast recovery as they would like because fix the draining and fix the recovery. Simple.
Perfect. You have something that's on the go. You have a program that's Flow Masters Community. What's that all about?
So basically, it's easy to get in flow on your own. Once you basically do the checklist, the magic happens when you have many people in flow coming together for the same common cause. It's the group effect that I think it was Rise of Superman that I read it the best by Stephen Kotler. Literally, when you have people coming together for the same cause, the growth, learning, and flow acceleration is the most magical thing. And things that you think are impossible suddenly become possible. And that's what I'm building, is that container for people who love flow to come together and cultivate flow as a lifestyle instead of something that let me flip on flow for 2 hours as I'm programming, doing my work, and then the rest of the day I don't know what's happened. I remember I was working with a client and I asked them, like, when do you have the most flow? Well, when we have deadlines, like when we have a strong deadline, we just crank ourselves with coffee and then we go in the flow for a few hours, maybe few days, and then it's it. Like, but what do you do after? And that's what community is about. To realize that we don't have to crank ourselves up for coffee for a few days. We can have sustainable flow throughout the whole life. And that's what community is about, bringing people together for that.
This sounds like balance is the key to the whole thing. Everything in balance.
Balance is an interesting thing because you can have balance. And usually what I say about balance is when you go into the acro yoga, basically two people put their bodies together to create crazy shapes. And every person can be out of balance on their own, but as a shape, they're in balance. So single piece, out of balance, but as a group, they're in balance. So in that sense, you need balance, but you can always have a counterbalance that creates a balance within you as a structure. So what is more precise is harmony. There's always needs to be harmony within. That means I'm not falling out. So I feel safe in this container where it's a team, a group. So yeah, it's about creating harmony.
Tom, if someone wants to reach out to you and get your services, become in the flow, how do they reach you?
So website, Instagram, or LinkedIn. I have a website, astahovskis.com, and Instagram, same name. They basically search my name on Google and you should find my contacts. That's probably the easiest way.
For the Flow Masters community, how do they find you there? Same off your website?
So there are links on my website, and there's also like astahovskis.com/flow-masters. So yeah, it's available. Also a link in my bio. So once they find me anywhere, there'll be links to community, either from my website or from link in bio on IG or in LinkedIn. So it's pretty straightforward.
Tom, so I want to say thank you so much for being a guest today and coming back. I really appreciate it, having this dialogue. It's enlightening. I want to say thank you to the Knack for Business listeners, because if this is something you resonate with, reach out to Tom's. And it's not just from books alone that he learned all this, but it's by actually going through the hard lessons and resetting and figuring things out. And if you need to kind of figure things out before you burn out, reach out to Tom's.
Everything you heard today is for educational purposes only. It's not professional advice. Before you act on anything, talk to a certified expert in your area. Your accountant, your lawyer, someone who knows your situation. We share perspectives. You make the decisions. Want more? Head over to blog.knack4business.com, packed with practical episodes on AI, marketing, leadership, and growth. No fluff, just the good stuff. Subscribe while you're there. Until next time, keep building.